It's now time for In Perspective, brought to you by Bonafide Gentleman Salon.
Good afternoon again, listeners. Good afternoon and welcome. Listeners, it is clear in my mind, and I'm sure in the minds of many, that an election is on the horizon. And we need not look far to recognize that, because as we speak, the PNP and the JLP are both having rallies today, I gather, in the western end of the island. Yes? And they're getting ready to ramp up their bases, and they're getting ready to put to the electorate what they can do. And so, will the election be by the end of this year, or will the election be early next year? Listeners, your guess is as good as mine. However, what I can say is that we are indeed in the silly season. A lot of things will be said from the political platform. The Jamaica Labour Party will give you their reason why they think they should be elected to govern. And the PNP will tell you why they must be given another 4 years to govern. And so, listeners, we must discern. We must discern and discern properly. And we must listen. And we must question. And we must ask, is it affordable? And this brings me to the point. Yes, the point, promises made on the political platform. And listeners, I'm particularly troubled. I am troubled by the one that is promised by the leader of the opposition, Mr. Andrew Holness, that should the Jamaica Labour Party be elected into office, they will abolish auxiliary fees from our schools. So, listeners, we ask ourselves, what will happen? What will happen is that students attending high schools will now be going free of cost. Because if you remember clearly, it was the Jamaica Labour Party that abolished tuition, yes, under the Jamaica Labour Party's administration. Listeners, let me be absolutely clear. I have absolutely no objection to having students getting education free of cost. Because as an educator, I strongly believe in the education of our nation's children. But the fundamental question that I and many others are grappling with at this time is, how are we going to be able to afford it? We must grapple with it. Yes, listeners, we must discern carefully, and we must look through the fuzziness of it. We are aware, yes, listeners, all of us, that we are in a fiscal constraint as a nation. And the monies collected by way of auxiliary fees. Remember now, listeners, students do not pay tuition, they pay auxiliary fees. And these fees are used to pay, for example, the gate man at the gate that helps to secure the school, the cook in the cafeteria, the grounds man who helps to keep the school clean. These fees are used to get things for the lab. Yes, it's used to pay the utility bills, water, light, and so on. And so we must ask, how is it that our schools are going to be able to afford to do these things, yes, when at the moment, the present time that we are in, they are struggling to do so. And they are struggling to do so with the little subvention that they now get from the government. And so we must ask and we must discern, how is it that we are going to pay for this? How much will it cost taxpayers? Will the money that Mr. Holness is promising to give to these schools be ready to to be given to them on the first day of September when school opens. So there's a smooth running of our school system. Listeners, these are the questions we must ask. Because I wonder to myself, if Mr. Oles is living in an entirely different Jamaica than anyone else. Because then, as a former Minister of Education, having seen how the sector deteriorated under his watch, would now come, yes, and make such frivolous promise. Listeners, it's not only a gimmick. It's not only a gimmick. It's a farce. It's a deception of the highest order. Yes, to trick the people of Jamaica. Mr. Oles and the JLP is now taking advantage of the fact that people are feeling a pinch of hardship and as such will fall prey to this. Listeners, we need not look far, and we'll talk about it later in the program, to see what free health care sold to us by Bruce Golding in order to win an election has brought us. We have hospitals that are underfunded and in total disarray. And this is the albatross, yes, that the Jamaica Labour Party under Bruce Golding has tied around the necks of the Jamaican people. And Mr. Oles is coming now with this removal of auxiliary fees to tighten even more that noose. We should not buy into it. We must shun it. Because here we have yet another promise. Yes, there's no cost, no details, no clarity as to where the money to fund this promise will come from. And anyone out there hearing this latest and other promises by the JLP would be inclined to believe that the country is awash with money, and out of spite, the current administration is just mean to spend it. The truth is, the country is just recovering from near bankruptcy. And listeners, it is time that we demand, it is time that we discern carefully, yes, that such policy changes not be willy-nilly made from political platforms by politicians to rile up a crowd. Yes? And not just be made by politicians who are hungry for power, but that they are taken to our parliament and rigorously debated. And that is In Perspective.
That was In Perspective, brought to you by Bonafide Gentleman Salon, located at Shop AU3, corner of Progressive Supermarket, Witter Village, Ironshore, Montego Bay. Telephone 953-9634 or 620-6360. Email bonafideja@gmail.com and like us on Facebook.